Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. Today on the podcast, I have the honor to dive deep into loss and trauma with Rachelle Spencer, who I've known since 2016. She has experienced multiple miscarriages and an abusive, toxic relationship. Rachelle is proud of who she has become, not because, but despite of her grief and trauma. Rachelle found the support of a therapist instrumental in her healing and in making healthy decisions.
I know you mentioned therapist, but that was hugely instrumental for me to have a safe place, a sounding board for me. I don't want to underestimate how big that was, because I was figuring things out and learning to make decisions on my own. And there was one person that completely supported whatever decision I made and trusted me to figure it out.
About this week's guest. Rachelle Spencer is an entrepreneur and a mom in Baltimore, Maryland. She started her handmade jewellery business after she lost 4 children to early miscarriage. She now has a son, daughter, and another little one on the way. She spends most of her time doing photography, reading children's books, and trying her hand out at new creative outlets. Please check out Rachelle's links and her jewellery. I can assure you that I truly enjoy mine. Please let us know in the comments on how you dealt with your grief and trauma. We'd love to hear from you. So welcome, Rachelle. It's so nice to have you here on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Thank you. And just like I start any of my podcasts, how about you tell us a little about your story of loss and trauma in your life?
Sure. When maybe about 10, 12 years ago, my husband at the time and I were trying to get pregnant, and I had 3 miscarriages right in a row with each other, all in about a year time. All of them were really early. And then, of course, I had my son and daughter, and I'm pregnant with another one on the way too.
If we're just spacing this out a bit, you said 4 miscarriages in a row within a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 3. I lost twins, so that was one pregnancy.
Okay. How did you deal with that? I mean, you wanted to get pregnant, and how is that? How do you deal with being in that space of wanting to become pregnant and it not working or seemingly not working?
Yeah. Miscarriage was something that I didn't know about. My mom had lost 2 children before I was born, so I grew up hearing about it, but it wasn't something that I ever thought would happen to me. And it was really tough. I remember just feeling very angry and really numb going through it all right away. Yeah, it was hard. It was 2 miscarriages were right back to back with each other. And then it took a whole other year to get pregnant. And I was trying to get doctors to listen to me about, I thought my hormones were off, and I was still upset about losing the first 2. And then finally I got pregnant again. And at 7 weeks, I lost we went into an ultrasound and there was no heartbeat for the twins. And yeah, it was just devastating. And then after the twins, I got pregnant with my son right away too. So I didn't there wasn't a lot of space between them. Yeah. I kind of was just thrown into that world right away. And not handling it well. I definitely was not handling it well at first. I remember when I was pregnant with my son, I was so angry. And this is how I know that I wasn't handling it well, because I would wake up in the middle of the night with angry tears, and I would be yelling and cursing at God in my heart. And that to me, whenever I'm waking up in the middle of the night with a really strong emotion, I know that I haven't healed from that thing, whatever that is.
So it's interesting when you say, I wasn't handling it well. So in your idea at that time, or maybe now, what would it be like to be handling it well?
I think in hindsight, I wasn't processing like sadness the same way that I did later. And there was no real acceptance of it. I was still fighting, like, how dare this happen to me? And I also, looking back, am really sad about how I handled it because I was not attached to my son for his entire pregnancy. And I remember, like, when I was in labor with him, I was so angry at him for hurting me with all the contractions. And then they put him on me and I was annoyed. And that just like breaks my heart to like think back that was my experience with my first living child. Yeah, I wish that it had been a little bit different. I wish that I had done a little bit more of the emotional work to process that pain and loss, so that it wouldn't have kind of bled over into my relationship with, like, my beginning relationship with my son.
I mean, anger is a quite commonly experienced emotion after loss. Would you think that your body was protecting you from further hurt or further potential loss?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I still experience that, like, terror of losing my children. You know, having that first experience as a mom, like, yay, you're a mother. You see those 2 lines on the pregnancy test, and then your baby's gone. That was how I experienced motherhood, was by losing my child instantly.
Yeah.
And then every subsequent pregnancy, and like including this one, it all comes back of like, you are not assured that you're going to get to keep this baby.
Yeah.
Like, you can lose anyone that you love at any time, and their lives are just so, like, precious and so little, and so and like, even though you want to do everything that you can to protect them, there is actually very little that you can do to protect them yet.
Yeah. So what I have learned from trauma is that when the body has been going through trauma, and multiple miscarriages is a form of trauma again and again, you're elated and then sad and in despair, then the body can sort of be stuck in fight. And what goes hand in hand with fight is anger. So what I know for myself is if my system is overly activated and overwhelmed, when then I experience hurt, even if I just bump my knee, there's an immediate anger response. And for me, in my case at least, it's a symbol or a sign from the body to say, too much at the moment. I can't have more coming into my nervous system.
Yeah.
So for me, it's often to say, okay, I need to reduce the incoming impulses, whatever that is. Maybe do less or take a break, self-care. It's different. So not every situation can be just modeled at that. But to me, it's often the symbol. If I'm angry, it's been too much before. I've overextended myself. Does that fit for you as well? Make sense?
Yeah, I definitely think that is the case. I think back then I thought I was just an angry person. But now when I experience anger, it usually means that I haven't been taking more time for me, or I haven't been setting boundaries, like, to protect myself. It usually is like a warning sign now of like, you need to change something, because anger it's not every day now. It's not all the time. It's like a first warning system now.
Yeah, for me, it's like a turn back arrow to say, look back, what has been too much for you? What have you not seen? Or, as you were saying rightly, where did you have not enough boundaries or space for yourself?
Right.
And also, I'm assuming that, getting pregnant right again after a loss, or at least trying to get pregnant. I mean, I can only remember the years that I was trying to get pregnant, and every month it was not a miscarriage, but it was no pregnancy, which is before there's a miscarriage. And then And then when we did IVF, I was pregnant with the first round of IVF. And then later I had 2 miscarriages where I was also 7 and then 10 weeks pregnant. Wow. And it is that elation, and then it's the drop in potential that is here. And then you had 2 children, which are now how old?
10 and almost 9.
Okay, and now you're pregnant again.
And now I'm pregnant. Yeah.
How is that now? Because obviously in the past you were pregnant 3 times in a row, and then you had 2 of your living children, and now there's been 9 years since then. How is pregnancy for you now?
I'm trying to figure out if I'm ashamed or not ashamed of this, but it's not very different.
Yeah.
It is different in the sense that I'm not angry, but it's not different in the sense that I'm still terrified.
Yeah.
That it really brings back all of that like possibility of loss is so close to my mind all the time. I have already been through at least like 4 very specific occasions in this pregnancy where I was sure I had lost her.
Yeah.
And it was really hard the first time with my new husband, because I divorced my other children's husband and then just got remarried. This is his first experience of being a biological father. He's been a great stepdad, but and then like 1 week into this pregnancy, I was sure she was dead, and I was grieving openly, and he had to experience that and like his terror and like upset about that. And he trusted me because I'm the one that's been through this. But then I stayed pregnant, and he was like, okay, this is her thing. Like, she's afraid of this. And then I went through it again, and he was like a little bit calmer that time. And then we went through it again. And that was by the 3rd time he was like, so listen, this is something like 3 for 3. She's okay. This is very real feeling for you, but she's probably okay because she was okay the last 2 times too. Mm-hmm. And like, let's keep assuming that she's going to be okay. And it's been a roller coaster, this pregnancy. And I guess I'm partially surprised and partially not surprised that I'm going through this all over again because those first losses still stay with me. Those are still very real to me.
Yeah.
They're not always like daily, but when I'm pregnant, it is almost daily that I have like this other like child that I want to protect, but I feel helpless to actually do much to protect. And with my business, I'm in the loss world where I hear so many stories of loss at every different stage.
Yeah.
And so I don't always get to escape that feeling of like, no, we're past 24 weeks. Like, she's viable now. I don't get to experience that because then there are other people that have lost them at 40 weeks. And
yeah. And you know too much.
And I just know too much. And it's not something that I can really escape from. The difference is that I don't let myself necessarily go numb from it. I definitely handle these fears differently than I did before because I've been in this business for long enough that I've had to deal with these fears long enough. I've learned what the warning signs are. Like, what do I do? How do I take care of myself when these fears just become so big? And like, usually that means just taking a step back and like feeling my feelings. Like, I will cry, weep, or whatever I need to do. And then kind of like pull myself back together after I've felt and like exhausted the feeling. And then I'll tell myself, is this happening right now? Are you losing her right now? The answer is no. Yeah. I can feel her kicking. Yeah. She's okay for right now. And then you just kind of like move on for the next day and for the next feeling, and process each one as they come, and don't anticipate them, but also don't be surprised when they show up.
It sounds like that two things. Like one is that you're staying in the moment, being like, it's like you do cognitive behavior therapy with yourself. Like, is it that I'm losing her right now? No, she's kicking. And also at the same time, you are feeling your feelings. And I wonder if it is like an opportunity that you're taking to shed any previously unshed tears.
Right. Yeah.
Does that resonate with you when I say that?
It really does. Yeah. When, I know I've alluded to this a little bit, but the jewelry business that I started actually after I had both my son and my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that first year, like 2014, 2015, when I started that, and I told my story and did my first giveaway, which blew up and everyone wanted to be part of it. They sent me their stories and I was bombarded with story after story after story after story. And that was the first year that I had to grieve.
Yeah.
Like, it forced me to grieve because I needed to be professional, and I like needed to feel my feelings. And so I learned by practicing weekly, daily, how to remove myself from other people's stories or what was happening, and process how I felt about it. And it was always related to like my own grief. And and by doing that, I learned to separate my grief from another person's grief.
Yeah.
And I learned what I needed to do to take care of myself before I could come back and then be professional, caring, empathetic person to respond to these stories that I often would wait to respond until I had done my own grief work. And then I could jump back in.
The way you described it is wonderful. And I can relate to that because in my work with clients, when I feel empathy or compassion, without going into the description of the words, but I can differentiate in myself whether this is about me and my grief or whether this is about being there with someone else and holding space and being in tune. So the difference between being affected myself, right, my own grief is triggered, or whether I'm here with that person and it's just a moving situation. Right. And I can tell the difference within myself. And the way you described that was just like that. It's like, okay, what do I need to look at in myself? And for me, with the years, that has become less and less. So there's less and less parts in which I become re-traumatized or I become affected by listening to someone else's story where it's me and my grief triggered, and more that I'm here for the person. And this is really just a lot to bear. And also I think it's important for people to hear that because, for example, in peer groups, that can come up where I have clients joining peer groups. The one that I have with the Maybe I'll Heal peer support group. And they have this told me that sometimes it gets too much. And it's really important to gauge that measurement of where is it supportive and where is it re-traumatizing. Right. And that can be certain stories, or there can be certain situation, or it can be just an overwhelm. And again, they're just like with the anger we spoke before, it's reading your own cues as to what's my sign of saying, okay, enough, I need to step back, or I need right. to draw a boundary, or spend less time Googling it or finding out about something.
Yeah. I agree. It's less traumatizing the more you are in that space. Yeah, there's still every once in a while a story will come up that will usually get me. It's almost always when it has to do with an age that is related to one of my children's ages. Mm-hmm. It's almost always related to that.
Yeah, it's like triggering the fear of what would happen to them or to you if they were dying, or something would happen to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for anyone listening, we're going to put all the links to the resources we speak about into the show notes. So if you're listening on podcast app. Just go to the show notes and you'll find all the links. Then there was more in your life that was also traumatic. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. You're referring to my divorce.
Yeah.
I was married to, and I had my son and daughter with a man who was very toxic, and was dealing with a lack of support while I was going through all of that grief and starting my business. He didn't like the business. He basically, as soon as it started and was successful, he told me to end it. And that something was wrong with me for wanting to have work outside of childcare and cleaning the house and making food.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a very unhappy marriage for that, basically the whole time that you've known me, because we met right when it started. And so that was very hidden and not really something you talk about when you're trying to work on a marriage. But then in 2015, I started to get help, and it got way worse. And I ended up leaving. I left twice before I fully left. But I woke up one day to being threatened, and right before he left for work, and I made sure that we were gone by the time he got back.
When you say threatened, can you specify what that means?
He had been hacking through some emails and had seen, I think I was writing to my therapist about wanting to leave and wanting to find a place to live. And he found out about it, and I woke up to texts that, because we weren't in the same bedroom at that time. And he just was like, how can you call yourself a Christian when you have so much hatred in your heart? And then the last thing he said to me right before he walked out the door was, keep planning. And as if keep planning and find out what happens.
Okay.
That was when I knew it was time to leave for good. And I mean, that was not even it was really scary leaving. It was very, very scary. He was stalking me. He would, if I went out of town, he would show up to the places that I was out of town in. He was tracking my phone calls, and yeah, it was really scary, very intense, but, and so, yeah, that was another trauma that I definitely had to process for a lot of years before, and then only just started talking about it publicly.
Yeah, we spoke about that just before starting to record the podcast, that it is different to speak about the traumas of the miscarriages, which you have been speaking about for many years and have become accustomed to, versus this that you haven't been used to talk about and only just started.
Right.
And it's still, like you mentioned to me, still like trying to find the language. And I can hear when you speak, it's trying to find, what do I say? How do I say it?
Right.
Is it still dangerous to speak about it? Is there still a fear attached to, if you speak up about it, that will lead to repercussions?
Definitely regarding my children's custody, there's a fear of that, because we do share that custody. He gets them every other weekend. So anything that has to do with them or that could be used in court, I don't talk about. Until they're adults, they won't. I will keep trying to protect them. Yeah.
And also assuming that when they go to him, they have to deal with the differences in stories that they hear or probably are exposed to.
Right. Yeah. One thing that just came up this last 2 weeks ago, whenever I posted my story, they heard me telling another person's story of abuse. One of the nests that I made was by a woman whose baby died because her boyfriend was attacking her. And my son heard this story that's not mine, and he was like, "Mom, did my dad ever do that to you?" And it shocked me. I didn't realize that that would ever be a question that they would think, because they really love their dad, and I'm so glad that they do. And I try to always allow them to feel whatever they want to feel about their dad. So I didn't know that they would ever ask me that question, and it led to an interesting conversation where I was like, "Well, no, he never hit me, but he did hurt me in these other ways." And I told them one very specific story, where he would touch me, and I would tell him, "No, I don't want to be touched like that." And he would hold his fist up to my face, and he would say, "This wedding ring means that you can't say no to me. Like, your body belongs to me." And my son, who I've done so much consent work with my children about, your body is your own. Nobody gets to touch you without your permission. And I do so much like parenting around that topic because of my story, and that it shocked that he was like, "Oh, really? Like, yeah, of course that was wrong for my dad to do that." But his response was completely fine. His response was, I think my dad has changed. He's not like that anymore." And I think that that's fine for him to process, like, hearing something terrible about a parent, and then to say it's probably not like that anymore, because it probably would be really difficult for him to live with that. Yeah. So it's still very much ongoing.
And only from my experience with my daughter, she picks up on verbal and non-verbal cues, in a way that I'm really aware of how much that she can handle. She gives me symbols and signs as to, okay, too much.
Right.
And still there's things that she hears and sees that I know are challenging. And when you spoke about that with your son, I remember the video that you shared on Instagram where you told them about being pregnant. And it was very interesting to see your son's reaction versus your daughter's reaction. And I mean, it tells a story about their different fears and worries and excitements, and how they bring those two together, because I'm 100% sure both of them were excited. But the first thing comes, like, your son said, "Don't miscarry."
Yeah.
And your daughter was just like excited and happy. So that tells a story as well, to see, okay, this is what lives within our children. Like my daughter, for example, she is very afraid of dying. She's very afraid that something would happen to mom and dad and they would die. That's a constant worry. I mean, yes, it's very common in children at that age, but for her is extremely heightened. So if I just tell her about a friend who just was diagnosed with cancer, and I talk about that, she's like going into overwhelm and says, "Mommy, I can't hear about that." Because then it triggers thinking, well, if that happens to your friend, Mom, it can happen to you. And I don't want you to die.
Right.
So I'm very aware of how sensitive that is of whatever they pick up. And in your case, as you say, it's still ongoing. I mean, they have both. They have to deal with the and not the or.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that ongoing situation of dealing with being separate, but now starting to speak about it, and still knowing that you can only protect your children to a certain extent?
Holding that space for, like, my fears versus what I tell my children, or how I raise them, what my fears are with them or what my fears are with me. I have been holding that space for many years now. We've been trying to think. Yeah, like I left 2016, so it's been 6.5 years. So holding space for that is not new for me. Finding the language to describe how I hold the space for that is a little bit newer for me, because I have to trust that they will figure out the differences that they need to be able to thrive in like later in life or in adulthood. And I hope that they see me empowering their voice in their relationships with me and in their relationships with their dad. You know, when they bring home concerns that they have, you know, the first thing I would say to them is, well, did you tell your dad what you were feeling? And usually the answer is no. But then modeling for them, you can bring your concerns to me too. This is what it looks like to work on it with a parent, to have a parent listen to you or make adjustments to help you. And being the healthiest person that I can be so that they know what it looks like and what it doesn't look like. I want the contrast to be so great that they figure out which one they want to follow.
Yeah, exactly.
And not like, we don't really, having that question for my son is different because we don't usually talk about it so directly. I usually would be much more vague in my answers of like, oh, you know, mommy and daddy broke up because we didn't love and respect each other. You know, that's like been the basics of like, this is why it happens. And then I would just devote all of my energy to finding the language that they can learn to be the healthiest that they can be, no matter where they are, no matter who they're surrounded by, no matter what type of people they're around, because it's not just going to be that relationship with that other parent, right? They're going to come across people like this later in life. And it's important to me that they choose friends and that they see when there are danger signs with other people, with teachers or coaches or anything that they're doing, that they can process it with like a healthy lens. And I'm providing that lens for them. And so I just have to hope that they're going to figure it out if I keep like being the healthiest person that I can be.
Yeah. And now in your situation, similar to mine, they have a third person that is giving them an option of how a person can relate to them, how
Right.
a person can relate to life and to rules and to fun. And so I think, I mean, at least from my experience, I see it as just such a gift that my daughter now has 3 adults who love and care for her in different ways, in completely
Right.
different ways. Like, I mean, me and my ex-husband have much less patience than my new partner. So, I mean, she's very aware. My daughter is 11. She's very aware. She says, oh, apparently all the women in our family don't have a lot of patience. I'm like, And then she has a new father figure who has a lot of patience. So they get to make it comes in a melting pot as to, okay, this is how I can be. And in the end, I believe that our children then choose how they want to be.
Right.
And in my case, my daughter partly will emulate what she sees in her dad and partly emulate in what she sees in me and also in my new partner.
Right.
And it's going to be a mix, depends on the child.
Right. Yeah, it's a beautiful mix and neat to be able to watch them navigate that. I enjoy in part like watching the conflicts too and conflict resolution as you bring more people in and then now with like another baby coming too, like it's going to increase the skills that we're all going to have to learn. It's going to be fun. It's a fun adventure, this life.
Yeah. So one of the last things that I wanted to ask you in relation to breaking off that relationship, that toxic relationship, what resources and insights, besides going to see a therapist and working with her or him, have helped you to come to the place where you knew and could leave? You said you had like a couple of times that you tried to leave. And that's very common actually in abusive relationship, that people try multiple times before it sticks. What helped you? What resources and insights have helped you to make a break in that traumatic relationship?
I know you mentioned therapists, but that was hugely instrumental for me to have a safe place, a sounding board for me. I don't want to like underestimate how big that was, because I was figuring things out and learning to make decisions on my own. And there was one person that completely supported whatever decision I made and like trusted me to figure it out. And having, if you can't afford therapists, having friends or like a victim advocate, someone who isn't going to speak into your life and tell you what to do or how to interpret it, but just listen and then like build that trust in you to figure it out is huge. It's everything. Having that space to build your own trust in yourself to figure it out is a huge part of that healing. That's a huge step to be able to say, I know what I need to do next and I can do it. I guess I am a huge fan of educating yourself on as much as you can. And I did a lot of that for many years. I wanted to understand what happened to me so that I could make different choices. And I have some family that believed me, and that was huge too, to be able to move closer to family and to have some space, some safe spaces. Even though I think it's important to be honest that I actually had to push away space, like friends that I thought were safe, that were actually indeed harming my ability to move forward. And that's really sad. And that's another type of grief that I had to go through, was to say, I need a break. This is too much. I need you to take a step back. And if I can, I will come back and I'll explain to you what happened. But for me, I need to be able to make these changes on my own. And you may not understand why. It's going to be confusing and hard to watch, but this is what I need. And that, I would say, like, grieving the friends and the safe places that happens after a divorce was almost a greater grief and sadness than even losing my marriage was. And so, just kind of like waving at that type of grief with divorce. And maybe you've experienced that too with your divorce, that it changes those relationships, and those can be like harder.
Definitely.
Harder to lose.
Yeah, it's a completely different form of loss where, there's a trying to understand that which just doesn't give all the answers. I mean, it's obvious that the time today is not enough to discuss certain of the aspects of your situation. And
Sure.
Maybe we can come back together even when you might have gathered some more experience in sharing that specific situation of the trauma and the loss of your marriage and all the ideas. I mean, I know from whatever you've shared with me otherwise that there's more parts to that puzzle. But for now, thank you so much for what you have shared already, and for your honesty and authenticity, and for willingness to speak about hard topics.
Of course.
Shall we do the rapid fire questions?
Sure.
So grieving and trauma means?
It means messiness and confusion, a lot of different feelings, and it demands your attention.
And healing means?
Healing means I take time for myself to process and to feel my feelings, to like to honor those feelings.
And what I have learned about myself in the light of loss and trauma?
I have learned that I am resilient and that I can go through hard things and still find hope and meaning in life.
And one thing I wish people knew about loss and trauma?
I think it's really messy. And it doesn't go away, but you can be whole again.
And one specific thing that has changed since my loss and trauma that I wouldn't want to miss?
I like who I've become because of my story, and that includes the loss and trauma, that I am proud of me, and I wouldn't change who I got to become because of it.
That's beautifully said. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.